Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Now, today I am joined by Marysol James, and Marysol is a best-selling author turned coach and global speaker, and she specializes in helping high-achieving women get out of narcissistic, abusive relationships. So, when we head into this podcast, I do need to give you just a little bit of a trigger warning as we head in. Not something I normally do, but I do want to just make sure that you're prepared to understand. We talk specifically about abusive relationships in this episode. So if this is something you think might be a bit too much for you or might be a bit triggering, please know that going into it. So some of the topics that we talk about are things like manipulation and shame, violence against women, because we are talking specifically about abusive relationships, gaslighting, and dog whistling. So we've got a lot of content in here that could be, like I say, a little bit sensitive, but for me, it is a vitally important conversation. And as you know, it is not a conversation that I intend to shy away from. So Marysol brings much lived experience as well as education and knowledge on the topic. And she also provides as many solutions as she does examples of the ways in which domestic abuse could show up either in your life, your own relationship, or your workplace. So, this episode is scheduled as well to mark October, which is Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. So, it is incredibly important to be listening to this right now. And I know it's not a topic that gets a lot of airtime, and that is why we are bringing it to you. So, without further ado, please sit back, relax, and get comfortable in whichever way works best for you. And please welcome Marysol James to the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. So I mean, yeah, I love that you've got those two kind of like really intertwined but also really different sides to you as who you are in your career, in the sense that you have got the romance novelist and author side of things. And then you have got this very much serious, you know, completely I was going to say completely important, and I feel like even those words don't sound big enough. Like the critical importance of the work that you do in a leadership and workplace space, of highlighting like almost like the hidden conversation around domestic abuse and how it shows up and how it impacts people. And it is interesting having like that foot in both camps, and you know, I guess that's what we're going to get into, isn't it, in your own personal story and how it led you to where you are. But that was something that really stood out when we met at the PSA meeting, which was like, you know, no one's really talking as openly as I think that you are, in a way that is as productive as you are positioning it to really help people understand, like, this is something we have to be paying attention to. And especially in society right now, where like opinions have never been more divided.
Yeah.
We've all got them. They're all very strong, you know, and we're seeing a real rise, I would say, this kind of the return of misogyny. Not that it ever really went anywhere, to be fair, but it's got this real peak, isn't it? So tell me a bit more about like how you arrived at the sense that actually this is of critical importance and we need to be doing more.
Just from my personal experience, unfortunately, I am a woman who has a master's degree in international business. I have 20 years in international management and leadership in Guangzhou and Hong Kong and in Warsaw. When I got ill and had to leave management, I became a best-selling romance writer by accident. Just I self-published for fun, and then that took off. And so when I decided that I was well enough to resume work, I decided to not return to management. I decided to carry on self-publishing, and I started this flourishing romance writing business out of nowhere. I wrote 30 books in over a decade. So I had all of this lived experience and all of this education and all of this success, and I had successfully moved my life overseas several times alone as a young woman and made a go of all of it. Like everything was possible for me if I put my mind to it. And I was not used to failure, and I was not used to being weak. And I certainly wasn't used to feeling out of control in my own life. And I had had very healthy relationships with men. My parents had a very healthy dynamic that I was raised in. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes out of nowhere. I'm at the height of my life and my profession. I'm a top 100 Amazon writer, which if you're self-published is really
It's a
something.
huge deal.
Like Stephen King is a top 100 writer, right? Like, and so was I. And this guy just came out of nowhere, and I was just radiating confidence, and I was so happy, and I was working for myself, and I was writing this. I had this amazing creative outlet that I had never really had in management, you know? Um, and in a matter of just a couple of years, he unraveled everything that I had built up over all of that time, all of those successes and all of that confidence and all of that joy and all of that self-love just went because I met the wrong man who targeted me and love bombed me. I fell in
Mm,
love with something that wasn't real, but I didn't know that.
yeah.
I was woefully unprepared for this kind of predator. I had no idea what to look for. And even when things began to go wrong, I still had no idea what I was dealing with at all because narcissistic abuse is so subtle, it's so corrosive. And when I finally saw what I was in, like when I finally understood that I wasn't crazy and it wasn't in my head, and um, that my reality that I was experiencing wasn't like it was so tenuous at that point, and I understood that my grasp on reality was really slipping because he was manipulating and distorting my reality. I still had to wait a year to leave because I didn't have any money, because I had set my writing aside to go work for his company, which was a startup. And I thought I was being a good partner. I thought I was being supportive. I thought I was supporting the household in a different way. I mean, my son was there with us. It was the three of us.
Mm.
And I just got to the point where I thought, I've got to get out, but I can't. I just can't. Um, and that's a horrible situation to be in. And then when I did finally save up enough money, sneakily behind his back for a year, I realized when I got out that just being out isn't enough. There's so much healing that has to happen. And when I went looking for that healing and help and support, there was this extra layer of guilt and shame put on me that as such a high achieving woman and such a high performing woman with all of these things in my background, how could I have been so stupid? And how did I not see it coming? And did I really not understand what was going on? Maybe I wanted to be dominated. Maybe I liked that. And then there's this whole other layer of, well, what am I weak? So it occurred to me that this was a conversation that just all over the place. There was so much to talk about. But what the big takeaway that I took away from this was if you're a high achieving woman and you experience this kind of abuse, like any kind of abuse, if you stay in it, it's because you're stupid enough to stay in it. Like you should know better. And high achieving women are catnip to narcissistic predators. They love us. I didn't know that either. So when we talk about how I came into this and why I do this now, it's because when we talk about abuse and violence against women, high achieving women are kind of not taken into consideration separately. And I think we do have to be, because I do think that there are certain things that hit us differently than women who are considered, like, I hate to say this, but like, like working class or not educated or whatever. So high achieving women have this whole layer of expectation on us that we should have known better. And that's just so shameful to say to someone, and it's not helpful and it's not true.
Even, and firstly, thank you for sharing that because, um, obviously getting yourself to a position where you can have that level of distance to even be able to talk about it, you know,
Mm,
and to be that vulnerable, that is not without hard work, right? That's not without your own personal journey. So thank you for sharing that. Um, and I can completely see, I mean, gosh, already my brain's just like, there are so many directions and questions I have, because even as you're saying, there is the way in which patriarchal systems, or are just designing themselves in, we attacking women, different types of women in different ways. And like you said, each one needs to be addressed for its specificity. Like, we need to understand, why is it
mm,
certain women with certain life experiences or certain kind of characteristics fall prey to certain men,
mhm.
um or narcissistic people, because I'm sure actually it applies in, same gender relationships as well, right? So, but for the purposes, I'm gonna go with, probably, the statistically, I'm imagining it's statistically more likely to be men that other people, that other
It is.
perpetrators,
Mhm.
and it's statistically more likely to be women, who are the victims of this. And yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because actually I can imagine there will be women listening to this who, when we think we've got when we live our lives thinking we've got our shit together, right?
Mm.
You don't expect to be caught off guard, to be fooled, to be like, we're not, it's just not a potentially an experience that our unconscious is just scanning for. It's
True.
we I think we fall in the camp, don't we, of like, well, that wouldn't happen to me.
Mhm.
Why, I would speak up, I would see it, I would not react in that way, I would not be, fall into that trap. And it's not true.
Well, it's 100% not true, and I'm living proof that it's not true. And one of the things that women that I talk to find comforting in a way, which is kind of a strange word to use, but it's the truth, is when I say to them, look, this is my background, this is my experience. Like, I tell them everything I've told you, and I tell them, and I ended up living in a narcissistic relationship for 4 years, and I brought my son into it. So I exposed my child to the abuse as well. And I mean, if it can happen to me, why can't it happen to you? Like,
Yeah.
why? What do you think makes you immune? Or what do you think protects you from
Mm,
that kind of predator? And they sort of look at me, and I can just see the relief when they say, okay, like, it's not because I was stupid. It's not because I was weak. It's not because I was, pathetic or needy. It's I was actually chosen. I was actually targeted.
mhm,
Um, and then what's always interesting for them to realize is, one of the talks I do is how the qualities and characteristics that have made us high performing, successful women are the exact same ones that keep us stuck in that particular kind of relationship, the narcissistic relationship.
mm,
All of those strengths actually play right into the narcissist's hands. And just one quick example I can give is that high achieving and high performing women are very used to seeing the potential in a situation. So we will go into a situation, let's say at work, and something is kind of a mess, like something isn't working, or something is just in the early stages of development. And we know it's not right, and we know we're not there, but we can see in the future where this is going, and we believe in it, and we work towards it, and we stick with whatever it is over the obstacles, because we truly believe that if we put in the work, we will get where we see it in our mind as being. Now, put that mindset into a toxic relationship
mhm,
where it started with a lie. The person that they showed up as, the man, the narcissist, was a fiction. They scanned you and they gave you what they knew you needed and wanted, which you might not even know yourself, but they
mhm,
know because that's how they hook you in, right? So you start off this relationship with what is really the dream man, and you're so aligned, and they want the same things you do. And your bad experiences, well, they've had sort of the same bad experiences. Like it's so uncanny. And of course, it's because it's not true. But in your mind, this is what the
Yeah.
relationship is and can be and should be forever because you believe that he's real and you believe that this is how things are between you. And so when things enter the devaluation stage where he starts to chip away at you or the mask starts to slip because he's got you where he wants you and now it's exhausting to do this act, so there's no need to act anymore. He's got you where he wants you, and you're looking at this person and they're not behaving the way that they were at the beginning, and they're not treating you the way that they did, and they're not saying the same stuff. And you start to think, what have I done to make this situation go so wrong? And all
Mm.
you see is the potential. You remember what the relationship could be. So you stick it out. You keep trying to fix it. You keep trying different things. And so you can see how this mindset that works us so well because it makes us dogged, it makes us tenacious, it makes us, we commit to things, works very much against us in a
Mm.
situation where somebody is literally lying to you and holding out an entire relationship that was never the reality. And yet that's what we believe we can attain if we just fill in the blank, if
Yeah.
we just do whatever.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that keeps us stuck, that belief in the potential of things and
Mm.
our belief that we can get to a better place if we just stick it out long enough. And
Yeah.
that doesn't work when you're dealing with an abuser at all,
Yeah.
at all.
And I can imagine that as well resonating with a lot of people generally, not necessarily about their relationships, but when we think about the way in which, as women, we are kind of socialized and conditioned, like we are so used to sacrificing ourselves for, partners, children, families, parents, it's just it's the way that life is presented to us and the societal tropes that we fall into. So it almost, like you say, we are perfectly primed then when someone presents us a perfect picture to buy into the fact that, well, I'll sacrifice for this because this is good. This makes sense.
Mhm,
And then the rug gets pulled out from under you. But exactly as you've just said, like the belief and the love and all like the stuff, the damage is done, isn't it? You're invested.
mhm.
Um, and that's rough. That's well, quite frankly, shit, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's actually devastating
Yeah.
because what it does is it starts to perpetuate the cycle of they withdraw and you rush forward to try
Mm,
to fix whatever the situation is, and you can't because the situation never existed. Like this
mm,
person that you're
yeah.
chasing isn't real. And then you fall into a lot of confusion, and then there's a lot of, your brain, you're like, I don't understand what's happening here. And then you do reach a point where something in you says, this is wrong. Like something is really wrong here. So you start to push back, or you start to withdraw to the point where he knows you're kind of on your way out the door, right? And that's when they swing back into the person they were at the beginning. It's like a suit they leave in the closet that they can put on as need be. And suddenly this guy from the beginning is back, and he's loving and he's attentive, and you're the most wonderful woman who ever lived again. And so you're thinking, oh God, okay, well there he is. He's real. Like I don't know where he's been for the past 3 weeks, but he's back. And so, and then you recommit because you're thinking, okay, well, I don't know what that rough patch was, but
Yeah.
he's back now. So you recommit and you're in, and any thoughts or plans you were making about getting out, well, you forget about them and you're back into it again. And everything's great and fine for 2 weeks or 5 days or whatever it is. And then the devaluation begins again. And you're back in that same cycle of confusion. And what happens as more time passes is the cycles get shorter and shorter. So the time between them love bombing you and hooking, like sucking you back in. And then the time they start devaluing you gets shorter and the negative period gets longer. But by that point, you're fully like completely confused and
Yeah.
doubting yourself. And there's a lot of body and brain chemistry that starts to go haywire. Like your brain literally rewires and you're flooded with cortisol and then you're flooded with adrenaline and then you're flooded, and you're up and you're down and you don't know which way you're even looking anymore. And it's like you just completely lost any control you had over your own life, your own thoughts, your own emotions. And you've kind of outsourced everything to someone, and that is their power. That is what
Yeah.
narcissists want, is that power and control.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like they do it in 2 days. I mean, it took my ex years to get me to that point, but it was very gradual
Yeah.
chipping.
Well,
It was very
because if they
slow.
immediately started doing it, you would see it for what it is, because you wouldn't have developed the connection and you'd just be like, oh no, thank you, not for me. And it
Yeah.
would be very easy to not get hooked in, wouldn't it? But it is, I guess this is why it is psychological abuse, isn't it? That it literally messes your head up.
Hmm.
And I can imagine your belief in it wanting to be the thing, you were sold a dream and you want that, and you want to hold on to that.
Well, it's especially disorienting for high achieving, high performing women who are really used to partners not totally supporting them. Like, oh,
Mm,
you work a lot, or oh, why do you have to go on a business trip again? In the beginning, the narcissist is fully on board with all of that. They think your success is amazing. They think the fact that you make more money than they do is great, like, yay, feminism. And you work really hard, well, that's fantastic. You go do you. I'll have the bath run with a glass of wine by the time you get home. Like, they're so supportive. They're your biggest cheerleaders. They're your biggest fans. And so, of course, you think, finally, I've met a man who's not threatened by my success. And as high achieving women, that's pretty rare. And this goes back
mm,
to sort of societal expectations and patriarchy. Women aren't supposed to shine as brightly as a lot of women do. Like, there are so many extraordinary women out there who are single because it means that if they go into a relationship, they don't get to shine, it's a threat, they have to play
yeah.
small, they have to diminish themselves. The narcissist is the exact opposite. They give you the stage, the microphone, they put the spotlight on you, they show you off. And so you think, oh, thank God. So when this guy starts disappearing, and suddenly he's like, well, why do you have to work late again? And oh, you're working
Mm,
another business trip, really? You're neglecting me. You think, oh, shit. Like, I'm gonna
yeah.
ruin
It
this.
must have gone too far, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna ruin this. And like, I know he's not insecure because look how he behaved for the past year. And that's when they start chipping
Mm,
away at you and where you start changing how you behave.
mm,
And it's one small thing at a
yeah.
time.
And I
And
think that's really critical as well to highlight, in the sense that I can imagine there will be people listening to this or watching this who genuinely will have supportive partners, and they will have been consistently supportive, and that is different. We're not saying don't go and look for red flags where there aren't any, because if you have someone who is consistently showing up, yay for you, quite frankly. That's what, you deserve it. That's good. But what we're talking about here is, it's the shift, isn't it? It's when it's something and then it becomes something else.
and
And
it's also the patterns. It's
yeah.
like, for example, like, I mean, one of my ex-boyfriends cheated on me. But he wasn't a narcissist. He was
Mm.
just a cheating dick, right? He was just
Yeah.
a cheater. Okay. He
Yeah.
was just a jerk. And then, my ex-husband never cheated on me, was never a jerk, never abused me. Fantastic man. Just we became better friends than husband and wife, and that's fine. So it is entirely possible. And my husband and I argued, but we had healthy
Yeah.
arguments where everybody showed up willing to say what they had to say, be totally transparent and honest, and walk away committed to improving, changing, working on something. That is a normal, healthy
Mhm.
relationship. So somebody cheating on you doesn't make them abusive or a narcissist, it makes them a jerk. Somebody that it doesn't work out with, it doesn't make them toxic, it just makes them not the right person for you,
Yeah.
right? Even somebody that you break up with, like a long-term relationship like my ex-husband, we did it respectfully, healthfully, you know what I mean? We've got 2 children together, all of that. So if we're talking about abusive relationships, we're talking about patterns of behavior. We're talking about the dynamics that are set and they go around and around and around. And no matter how much communication there is, or how vulnerable you try to be, or how much true effort you put in to own your part of it and change yourself or whatever, it just gets worse and it constantly escalates. That is a toxic dynamic
Yeah.
because when you're dealing with somebody who lied from the beginning, who made you fall in love with a fantasy, and who is now hell bent on taking your power and exerting control. And there's a certain thrill that a narcissist gets in breaking down a really strong, successful, independent woman. That gives them so much charge and supply and energy. Like they live for this, you know? That no matter how you try to deal with it, it doesn't matter how many times or ways you try to communicate with that, it will never get better because you're not dealing with somebody who legitimately wants to be in a healthy
Yeah.
relationship. They are incapable of it. So, I mean, if some of your female listeners are listening and they're thinking, "Oh, my husband really pissed me off this morning. He's a narcissist." No, no, not necessarily. You know,
Yeah.
maybe he's just having a bad day. Maybe you guys just need to communicate. Maybe he was tired. Maybe
Mhm.
you were being a bitch. I don't know, right? Like anything's possible. But it's when you see these same patterns over and
Yeah.
over, and you are always the one who ends up apologizing no matter what. Like he could do something really terrible, and you go and talk to him about it, and he flips it around and tells you all the terrible things you've done. Some of them last year, you know, they go through a list. You end up apologizing, and then you walk away thinking, wait a minute. I went to talk about this thing, and we never got to the thing
Mm.
because I became the one who was in the wrong.
Yeah.
So
Or all
nothing,
of the reasons why the things that I did contributed to why they did what they did, and
and
therefore
nothing ever
it's
gets resolved.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
nothing can be resolved. So there is no way you can have a healthy relationship with somebody who is committed to controlling the narrative, distorting the narrative, and rewriting the narrative to suit their purpose. Like there's nothing my ex loved more than saying something to me and me literally saying, "I cannot believe you just said that." And he's like, "What?" And I'd say, "Well, you just said this." And he's like, "No, I didn't."
Mm.
And I'm thinking, it was 7 seconds ago. I mean,
I
yes,
mean, and
I
that's
did.
the gaslighting as well that comes, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, that was, yeah. And that's where you get really, at first you're angry. And then after a while, like they stick to the story so convincingly, you start to think, did he say it? And that's where your grip on reality starts to really shift. And that's where the confusion really sets in because
Mm.
you might have a text and show it to him and say, look, this is what you said. Here is written proof, right? And his whole thing will be like, why are you always, what is this with you and evidence? Like, do you not trust me? Why do you? And so suddenly you're on the back foot again, and you're like, well, I have to do it because if I don't, you change your story. Oh, so what? So this is all about me? Like, I'm the only one who behaves this way? Yes, you are. Okay, really? Well, let's talk about all the things that you do.
Yeah.
And we're off again, right? So it's just trying to have any honest, open communication with an abusive person is absolutely pointless, and you will exhaust yourself
Mm.
trying to figure out a way to reach them. They cannot be reached. It
Yeah.
is
And I
just
think that's the critical
abandon
point.
all hope.
It's not you, it's them.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you cannot love them enough.
What is at my door? Can you
Oh, go
just,
get it. Yeah.
sorry, you'll edit this part out, I
I
hope.
can do. Yeah.
Sorry, delivery that I wasn't expecting until Saturday. So
Well, it's nice that it arrived early.
yeah, but it arrived right in the middle of this, right?
It's all good. Yeah.
Anyway,
But
yes,
but no,
we were talking about the lack of
yeah. So
possible
yeah, I
communication.
think it's a really important point to make, which is, it is not you, it's them. It is all it you cannot love someone enough and and you will be the one that changes them. It's just not going to happen.
Well, there's this thing that people say, and this is what he used to tell me, was he used to say, it takes two to tango, or, well, you're not perfect either. And it's like, when you're dealing with a really abusive personality, it doesn't take two to tango at all. That's not
Yeah.
right at all. And no, I'm not perfect, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm certainly not someone who misrepresented myself from the very beginning, right? Like I'm not a liar. So
Yeah.
it's one of these things where everybody says, well, relationships, there's blame on both sides. But honestly, if you're dealing with an abusive relationship, there's blame on one side. And I will go to the grave saying this, and this is part of the problem, is abuse victims are basically pressured to shoulder some part of the responsibility of being abused. And the only thing I will say, first of all, that's nonsense. But the only thing I will say about ownership is after I finally left him 2 years ago, I had to really look at my vulnerabilities, things in me, like what I call wounded strengths, things that I didn't know were there, that he somehow tapped into and found. And they were like holes in me that he had filled somehow. He had given me something that I was missing that I didn't even know. And it made me vulnerable to him. So when he started to remove those things, and I felt that enormous like cavern of emptiness suddenly that I was unaware of,
Hmm.
that is what allowed him to have the control over me that he did.
Yeah.
And my responsibility, my only responsibility, and it's quite enough for going on with actually, was to really look at those vulnerabilities, those things in myself that had made me vulnerable to this type of man. Why? Why did he choose me? What did he see in me that he could give me that I didn't know I was lacking? And that's as far as your responsibility goes in terms of ownership. Um,
Mhm.
in terms of everything that happened after that, I went in completely honest, completely open-hearted, and he came in as a lie from the very beginning. And so, no, it's there's no share of abusive responsibility here.
Yeah.
The abuse is down to the abuser, and you can make all these excuses about his childhood and whatever and whatever, whatever. I don't buy it. There's always a choice, and the fact is, they will. What I know now is that he had this same relationship with the women before me, and he immediately pirouetted out of our relationship straight into a new one, where he immediately started the same cycles and patterns. I was in therapy to deal with what happened to me. He was engaged to somebody else, which means they don't want to learn. They don't have the ability to learn and change unless they really, really want to be honest about the fact that they are a narcissistic person.
Yeah.
But narcissists are never wrong. So, like, good luck with that one,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
better to
and I
be out
think
there.
that's worth saying. I mean, again, I'm not a medical professional. I absolutely have zero psychological understanding in that regard. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, like, there is something within that person, within their brain, within the way that they process and experience life, um, that drives them in that way. It's not as if it's just something they fancy trying to see if they can be manipulative. It's like they are driven by being manipulative. Um,
There's, I
it's
mean, people say, yeah, what makes a narcissist? And there's some people who say there's something in childhood, and then there's something about narcissistic parents. But I read something more recently, which literally shows that the way their brains work, like literally the structure of their brains and the brain chemistry, which means it's pathological, which
Mhm.
means even if they were to realize how ill they are, because they are very mentally ill people, um, they will never be cured. What they have to do is remain a narcissist, just a very self-aware narcissist.
Yeah.
And even then, their first instinct will always be the really damaging one, the manipulative one, the traumatizing one. So I think it's possible to be in a relationship with a self-aware narcissist. I would just never do it because
Yeah.
I would never be able to relax ever.
Yeah.
I don't think I could trust the relationship.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to realize that if you're dealing with this kind of personality, it's permanent and it's pathological, and they can mask and pretend and pass for as long as they need to. But in the core of who they are actually this ill.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's it's important to kind of to address. And I can imagine that then there will be people listening to this and watching this thinking, oh, there's a few flags.
Um,
Or this is feeling incredibly familiar. Um, Yikes. What do you suggest I don't know, are there any questions they could ask of themselves or places that they can go to validate some of this or to express some of this? What do you suggest, what do we do if we are acknowledging and noticing like, oh yeah, this is horribly familiar?
yeah, well, if it's horribly familiar, then it probably is the reality. Like one of the things that we do when we're in a relationship with a narcissist is we don't actually know which way is up. We completely lose any sense of sort of reality that we have, and worse, we don't trust ourselves anymore. We don't trust our eyes, our ears, our text messages. We don't trust what we think we said or did. We have no trust or faith at all. So if you have reached the point where you are breaking beyond that confusion and you're thinking, uh-oh, if you're Googling things like, am I a narcissist? Or you're Googling things like, why does my partner do this? And you're starting to ask these questions, that is such a huge red flag because you're starting to see that something is very, very wrong. You need to trust that. And you will trust it and then not trust it, and then you'll trust it and then you'll not trust it. And that back and forth is very, very common, not just in narcissistic abuse, but any abuse. This is why it takes an average of 7 times for a woman to leave her abuser finally. And it doesn't matter what sort of abuse we're talking about. It's because you keep thinking that you are making it worse than it was, or you keep misremembering, or you are so brain fogged and so manipulated and so gaslighted that you
Mm,
actually can't remember what happened. Like when you're in it, you know it's horrible, but then 3 months later, you actually can't remember. Like you literally can't remember. So it is very easy to confuse yourself and not trust yourself. But like I said, if you've reached the point you're starting to ask questions, that is a huge sign. Like you know something is not right. You've lost the ability to trust your gut, but you've got to trust this. You have to, because this might save your life. At the very least, it's going to save you years of being in a situation that's abusive.
mm,
And the second red flag that I always think about and mention is imagine that you were sitting down in front of a person that you really like and really trust. And that could be your mother, that could be your best friend, that could be, I don't know, an ex-colleague, but imagine yourself sitting down in front of this person and telling them exactly what your relationship is like not pulling any punches and not sugarcoating anything and not being careful with your language, like just sitting down and saying, this is my life. And imagine what her reaction would be. Like, what do you think she would say to you? And that's a really important question for two reasons. First of all, because you would never do that. Never.
mm,
If you cannot go to the person you like and trust and respect most in the world and tell them the truth, then you know you're hiding something. That's a huge red flag. And the second thing is that you won't do it because, first of all, saying it all out loud is so overwhelming. It makes it so real. It's just so confronting. And you'll be confronted by their reaction, which means now you have to do something about it. Now you've committed. So that's another big red flag. If you cannot go to the person that you love and trust most in the world and just give it to them black and white, bare bones, that is a huge red flag because it means you're covering for his behavior. And why are you covering for his behavior if he's doing nothing wrong?
mm. Yeah, I think that's God, that's such a critically important thing, isn't it? Actually, the capacity to open up, because if you can share that information with the people closest to you, um, yeah, it is real, isn't it? It's real. There's no going back. It's even generally in non-narcissistic relationships, like when you're having a few doubts, it's always really hard, isn't it? Just to say, oh, I don't know that they're for me. Because
Hmm.
the minute you tell your best friends or your family or whatever, then like you say, it's real. And
Hmm.
this is that times 1,000, isn't it? Because you're still processing the is it me
Oh yeah.
inside as well. So it's a bit of a mess, or a lot of a mess.
Well,
So
and you do blame yourself.
yeah.
Like you are completely convinced that you are a lousy partner. You don't know how to communicate. You're not in it for the long haul. You're not as you haven't given as much as they have. You're not as good of a person as they are.
Mm,
Like just all of this. And you really believe this. You really, really do believe it. And this is the part that so many people look at you and go, how did you believe it? It's like, well, unless you've been in it for years and it's just draining away at you day after day. And, you're someone who, you're a high achieving woman, you get feedback at work, you take it on board. You think,
mm,
I'm being told this because they want me to grow, they want me to do better, they care about me. Well, when the person who says they love you most on the planet, and this person who was so amazing at the beginning comes to you and gives you feedback about the kind of partner you are, you take it on board and you think, well, I can be a better partner for them. But again, the problem is that you're dealing with somebody who is lying to you. None
yeah,
of none of what they're telling you is true. So you're twisting yourself in knots for something that isn't even real,
yeah.
unfortunately.
And it's certainly anything they tell you is not going to be in your best interest, right?
No,
It defeats the
no.
object.
But that's something else that keeps you stuck. Something that made you successful in life and work keeps you stuck in an unhealthy dynamic because you respect what they say and you trust it
Mm.
and you take it on board. And you can't do that with somebody who's out to harm you.
So if someone's listening to that and thinking, okay, red flag, I
Yeah.
I cannot sit down and tell my best friend this. Who do they tell?
Well, the great thing about the UK is there are so many organizations for women. And so many of them deal with domestic violence. And even if they're not really they don't understand narcissistic abuse, they do understand mental, emotional, and financial abuse because these things tend to all come together. So, I mean, I'm based in Nottingham. And when I sort of Google Nottingham women's organizations, shelters, and so on, I mean, I get seven that come up immediately. And I've called a few of them, just sort of research to see what they do and how they respond. And unfortunately, a lot of them don't pick up the phone, which is always something that worries me. But the ones that I did reach were very informed, very informative, very supportive, very non-judgmental. Um, but when it came right down to it for me, I had to get myself out of it. I didn't reach out to anybody at all. And I wish I had, but I didn't. I was just so isolated by that point. I was, because don't forget, I also had moved to England to be with him. I left my ex-husband in Poland and I brought my son to England. And right after we moved, 3 months later, we were in lockdown from COVID. So my isolation was total from the
Yeah.
beginning. And there was no getting out of it. I mean, it was 4 years that we lived together, and I was isolated that entire time. And that made it harder for me to reach out. But women who have friends, I would, or who are from here, or who just have a church or a community, I would really hope they could reach out in a way
Yeah.
that I just couldn't.
I guess maybe that's the reflective question, that if this really is chiming for someone, who seriously is the one person that you could at least trust with a little bit of it to
Hmm.
start that conversation and see where it goes. And I guess if someone's really thinking, I don't know where to start, well, then we'll have your contact details in the show notes. So if they don't feel that they can contact, a refuge, or if there genuinely is no one, but they just need to flag it, is it okay for them to contact you?
I would beg them to contact
Yeah.
me. Because the one thing at the beginning you asked me kind of how did I get into this? And part of it is that I really wish that I had met me 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I wish I had heard me on a podcast or the radio or whatever 6 years ago, because it would have saved me another 2 years of absolute hell, you know? Um, and when things turned physical in kind of the last 18 months, I mean, there was this one night that was so bad. My right shoulder is permanently damaged from what happened that night. It doesn't matter how much physical therapy I get, I will never again have full mobility in my right shoulder. If I had reached me 6 years ago, or someone like me had reached me 6 years ago, I would still have a functional shoulder. I would be able to move it. So the cost is so huge from not reaching out and not asking for help and not putting a plan in place to get yourself out of it. Like, I lost 4 years of my life to abuse. I lost my right shoulder. I lost my writing career. You know, I lost about $1 million worth of royalties that I would have earned if I had been writing for that 4 years rather than working for his company for free, like no paycheck. Um, I might have been in a relationship with a wonderful man for 4 years. I might have,
Yeah.
at the very least, I would have been writing and traveling, and my son would have been in a better place. We would have been at peace. So the cost is huge, massive. And if I can spare anybody that at all, then that is what I do. That is why I do what I do as well, to reach the me that's out there now that it wasn't reached all those years ago when I so badly needed her.
Yeah. And what I'm really hearing there is if anybody is even sensing just a little bit of this, but you're still on the fence as if like, yeah, but is it?
Mm,
It's probably worth just having a chat with Marisol because no right, she gets you. No judgment.
mm.
You can just like you can have a conversation. She don't know you, and you can slip off back into into your own life again. Um, and it will be okay, but at least you can sense check with someone who can maybe see things that you also probably see, but don't, you're feeling a little bit too nervous to fully acknowledge.
There's a woman, she's over in the States actually, and she just started working with me this past Monday. Um, And she and I got on a Zoom call, and it was no pressure. It was 30 minutes. It was just talking. And she was kind of describing the situation. And I was just, responding. And at one point, she got up and she just walked away from the call. Like, she left the camera on and she just walked away. And I was thinking, oh, hello, like, are you all right? And she came back after about 3 minutes. She kind of called from off
Mm,
screen, I'll be right back. And I thought, oh, maybe the dog, maybe a delivery, something, right? And she came back and she was in tears. And I was immediately just, I had no idea what had happened. And she said, do you know what, Marisol? She said, you are the first person who has spoken my words out loud. All of these things I've been thinking for the past 7 years,
mhm,
you have just said out loud. Like, she said, I'm not crazy. I said, you're not crazy. You're not crazy at all. And she said, I've never had anybody who could say, like, articulate all these things I'm thinking and feeling. She said, you really get it. And I said, I am so sorry to tell you that I do. I am
yeah,
so sorry to say that we share this lived experience. So if all I can offer to someone is the confirmation that they are not crazy, then
yeah,
I think I've done a lot. Because I promise you, you spend all your time thinking you're insane, really thinking there's something terribly wrong with you, and wondering why you can't get this under control and why you can't get this locked down and why you're slipping here and why your work is suffering there. And you just spend all this time going in circles. And to have someone say, 10 words and you realize, oh my God, like, it's not me, is it? No, it's not you. Um,
yeah,
and that's always kind of a shock to realize, but it's also incredibly empowering at the same time. Now, what you choose to do with it is up to you, but at least you can walk away with some knowledge that you are not the problem here. And really, you're not a lunatic. I know you feel like one, but you're not one.
Yeah. And that's God, that's so it's so hugely important, that sense of validation of and I can't help but feel the sadness of you're not alone either. And it's one of those awful facts, isn't it? Like it's not just you. This is a thing that happens
Mm-hmm.
and it's shit and
Mm-hmm.
it shouldn't, but it does, and you're not crazy.
No, that's a huge one. I mean, I remember, I mean, my mother back in Canada has got very, very advanced dementia. And her two sisters had it, and her mother had it. And it's one of these things that seems to be making its way down the women in our family on my mother's side. And I told my ex, my biggest fear in this world is to start slipping mentally that way. Like, I feel like it's kind of in my biology, it's in my genes. I don't know how far research is going to go into this. And I told him this. So he knew this was my biggest fear. And of course, I'm sure everybody listening can guess what happened, but he would say or do something and I would call him on it and he would give me this look of such concern and say, I wonder if that dementia gene is starting to kick in. Like I think you're actually starting to slip mentally. And I believed him, Katie, because why wouldn't I believe him? And I would think, oh my God, like thank God he's looking out for me, because I'm clearly starting to devolve mentally. And I ended up on medication for it because I thought, and the weirdest thing was, once I left him, I suddenly realized I have a perfect memory. There's nothing wrong with my memory, you know?
Yeah,
It's just my reality was being so distorted by him. And
yeah.
he used that fear against me. Like it was just like a little lever of control he had over me. And it was enough to make me question myself because I thought, well, is he right? Like, am I starting to show signs of it, of a decline? And it's cruel to use that against someone, but he did. And my son, and I sort of joke about it now, where he'll say something and I'll miss it. He'll go, "Oh, Mom, I think it's that dementia." And we kind of laugh about it, but at the time it was my reality. That was what I was
Yeah.
living in. So how do you trust your perceptions and your memories when the person that you love most in the world is telling you that you're mentally declining? It is
Mm.
so cruel, but it's um
Yeah.
it's part of the confusion. You don't know what to believe.
And given that we're focusing this conversation specifically around kind of women who will naturally find themselves in leadership positions because they will be
Mhm.
high achieving, they will be that way inclined. This is likely to show up as patterns of behavior in the workplace as well, right? There will be signs that this person is not okay.
Oh yeah, for sure. And one of the problems, well, there are several problems with this, but three problems I've kind of identified when we talk about companies and businesses and their female leadership is, first of all, the company doesn't know what to look for. Like they honestly don't know what's a red flag. And any red flags they do notice, they tend to pass off as burnout. So they tend to pass it off as, oh, she's stressed, she needs a vacation. Um, the second thing that tends to show up a lot is a company will say, well, we know she's having a hard time at home, but that's her personal
Mm.
business. It doesn't actually have any impact on her performance at work. And the third thing they tend to say is, well, even if we know there's a problem, it doesn't actually impact our bottom line. So as long as she's still kind of hitting her marks and performing, even at 50% capacity, it doesn't actually affect us. And those are three very separate problems, but every one of them is a reason why
Yeah.
less than 5% of UK companies have any kind of domestic abuse policy. They have no investment in this. They have no major um, interest in supporting their female employees in leadership. And one of the things I'm determined to do is to change that perception.
Good, because quite frankly, I mean, what you've just said there is you will see the performance of these women slip. Like it could look like burnout, it could look like stress, it could look like underperformance, but there is an absolute concrete thing that will be happening that you will have noticed that's like, gosh, like
Mhm,
that's not like Sarah. Like,
mhm,
crikey, Katie's really not like handling this project as well as she would in the past. Like there is a trigger
mhm.
of noticing.
And one of the things that, because when I talk to companies and they say, well, what can we do? Like, what can we do? And I'm like, well, thank you so much for asking. Let me tell you what you can do. And I actually have a step-by-step list of things. I have a checklist
Great.
of things that they can do. None of it costs any money. This is just about internal restructuring and prioritizing. I mean, HR already exists. A lot of companies already have a chief wellness officer or a chief people officer. So these mechanisms are in place. They simply aren't being pulled.
Mm.
So one thing I tell them is you can look for the big red flags, like, oh, she looks exhausted. Oh, she's calling in sick a lot. Oh, she's zoning out during meetings. Oh, she's not doing overnight travel anymore. Red flag, sure. But there are tons of micro patterns, really things that HR doesn't really have a box for. Like if somebody's absent, there's a box for that, right?
Yeah, yep.
If we're talking about a performance review, we can talk about missed deadlines. Everything's got a box.
There's a
But
form or a process. Yep.
there we go. But if have you got a box for she acts really weird around every payday? Do you have a box for that? Because you should, because this is a micro pattern where if a woman is being financially abused, even if she's extremely well paid, payday is a flashpoint for her in her relationship. Every month on the dot, to the minute of that money hitting her account, chances are it's a joint account. Chances are he monitors it. Chances are he totally controls it. Chances are she doesn't even have access to her own money, no matter how much it is. So payday is a big red flag. But unless somebody says to you, hey, do you notice Sarah acting really weird around every payday? And they go, well, yeah, now that you think, now that I mention it, yeah. And you're like, well, that's a sign of financial abuse. And they go, oh, and it just doesn't occur to them. But this is one of the things that I have this amazing, like I shouldn't say amazing, like it's a good thing, but I have this very amazing dual perspective because I do have a background in management and corporate and international business. So I know that side of the table, right? But I'm also very familiar with um, the signs of abuse, the
Yeah.
hallmarks of it from a victim perspective. So I can look at return on investment and risk and profit and expense and all of that. And I can also talk about why Sarah acts weird about any kind of overnight travel or why Sarah shows up to really important pitches looking exhausted and frustrated and distracted. It's because her husband has sabotaged something the morning of the presentation. He's hidden her phone, he's hidden her plane ticket, he's hidden her laptop. She shows up looking unprofessional and flustered. And you're questioning if she can handle
Mm.
the job anymore. And I'm telling you, the fact that she showed up at all tells you how competent and amazing she is, but someone is actively sabotaging her. So things like that, where you sort of say, well, have you noticed that Sarah, poor Sarah, whoever
I
she,
know,
poor
poor Sarah.
Sarah,
Sorry. Sorry
um,
to the Sarahs
sorry
of the
to the
world. It's
Sarahs,
not
but
personal.
have you noticed that Sarah shows up to really important pitches looking hassled and she's missing a crucial piece? Like, have you noticed this is a pretty regular thing? If it happens once, okay, but if it's a pattern, if it's a
Yeah.
micro pattern,
Yeah.
somebody's sabotaging her, probably, you know?
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like you say, like people have bad days, people have off days, shit happens, right? Traffic happens, kids happen, life happens. We all screw stuff up. And I think there is definitely the argument to be made that like that we have to allow that to happen.
Mhm.
And like you say, patterns are definitely where it's at, and that's the thing to look at. And even if it isn't a signal of an abusive relationship, it's still a signal of something.
Something's wrong.
You know,
Mhm,
something is happening. You know, if someone's acting weird around payday, they could have like a gambling problem, you know? Like
mm,
there could be many things, but
mhm.
actually it's the patterns that will tell you that a person is not okay.
And I mean, isn't that sort of the point of HR and wellness and chief people officer is to help with the mental and emotional and physical health of the employees? So, like you say, if around payday, poor Sarah goes missing, well, maybe it's because she's been up all night arguing with her husband about money because he controls it and she's
Yeah.
begging for money for, I don't know, the kids need dance shoes or something, and she's begging him for the money for it. She can't come to work the next day. Maybe Sarah has a gambling problem and she's off to the casino. Maybe Sarah has an alcohol problem
Yep.
and she got paid and she dove into a vat of wine and she can't function today. None of these things mean that Sarah is okay.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
so,
None of these things are good.
none of these things are great for Sarah or the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
So it's a way, I think micro patterns are a far greater indicator that there is an issue with a staff member than what we consider sort of large red
Mm,
flags. I talk to companies about the micro patterns, which only people who have been abused understand and experience and know are signs. I know
yeah.
these things are signs. And maybe I'm wrong, and you're right, it's not abuse, maybe it's something else. But either way, it's something that they probably need some support with. There at least has to
Yeah.
be a conversation about it, right? Um,
Absolutely. And actually, you know, if the answer is they are trapped in
mm,
an abusive relationship, then like surely being able to identify that and help them acknowledge that so that they can then do something for themselves about it.
mhm.
Like why would you say, yeah, but the bottom line's okay? Like I mean, we know that that's reality, but also seriously, like
Okay, well,
seriously.
let's talk about how okay the bottom line is, because let's have some statistics, because I'm a big statistics sort of chick. So, 1 in 2 women in the UK will be a victim of domestic violence at some point in her life. That's actually a lowballed number. Let's all face that. So that's 50% of the women walking around the UK right now. If they aren't experiencing abuse right this minute, they are like me and they have or they will. So that's just the reality of it. So look around at how many women are in your company and then just do some, you figure at least 1 or 2 of them, depending on the size of your company, maybe 50 of them are being abused right now. That's just maths. Um, if you want to talk about money, the Home Office brought out a report just in 2022 saying that the UK economy loses 14 billion pounds a year to domestic violence, domestic abuse. Not million, billion. So somebody's bottom line somewhere
Yeah.
is suffering. I mean,
Yeah.
right? And the other kind of scary thing is that I can't remember, I think it was the Office of National Statistics said that um, high achieving women in leadership who are experiencing domestic abuse are 50% more likely to leave the company and experience burnout than women who actually experience burnout. So this thing where, oh, it's always burnout, it might look the same, but it's not. And women leave faster if it looks like burnout, but it's actually domestic abuse. But the really scary number for businesses that care about their bottom line is women, high achieving women, these are women in leadership positions, the backbone of the company. If they are being domestically abused, they are 60% more likely than women not being abused to leave the company within 3 years. So you have a retention problem. You will not keep your high achieving women where they are for much longer than 3 years if they make it to 3 years. Think about your leadership pipeline. Think
Mm,
about your retention. Think about your group dynamics. Think about all the experience that she's walking out the door with and the chain of command, how things work, right? How she's leading, who she's mentoring, who's looking to her for guidance and support. And if you really want to talk about your bottom line, Replacing a high achieving woman after she's left costs 200% of her salary just to replace her. So
Yes.
any company that tries to tell me, oh, our bottom line is fine, it is not.
Yeah.
It is not. I'm promising you, there is a financial hit somewhere.
Somewhere.
You
Yeah.
choose not to identify it, but it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. You may not directly attribute it to this problem, but this is the problem. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Um, Marisol, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Is there anything else that you would like to say or share that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about that you think that people listening to this or watching this really need to kind of know or acknowledge or recognize?
I think I would speak to the businesses directly. Anybody who's in business or is a decision maker in a business, I'm telling you, you have a problem. I don't want to debate with you if you have a problem. I don't want to talk to you about if you have women in your company who are being abused. Okay, you do. You have a problem. And you have two choices here, and there are only two. Choice number one is you keep your problem, carry on. And choice number two is you fix your problem. And that's it. That's what you've got. Because you have a problem. And I can actually help you solve it. I am uniquely positioned to help you solve it. And I really want to work. It's kind of interesting, taking a more personal look at things. I really would love to work with companies in and around Nottingham, which is where I am. Mostly because when my son and I moved here 2 years ago for my son to go to college, Nottingham was my place to land. It was where I escaped to. It was where I rebuilt my life and I healed. And this city has become my home and it has given me so much. And my son as well. It's given us a whole new life and a whole new start. And I want to really give back to the city
Mm.
that is now my home. So I want to work with local businesses to protect their female leadership and employees because I know that the ripple effect from domestic abuse, I mean, look at the children, look at the future generations. Look at her friendships. Look at her family relationships. Look at the neighbors. The ripple effect out to society is massive. So I want to help make the city that's made me better. I want to make this city better. So I really want to tell businesses, especially around here, that I really want to help. I want to give back and I want to improve things. And I can. I really can. I'm uniquely qualified, unfortunately, to do so. So please do not hesitate to call me, ask me, even if nothing comes of it, you just want a conversation, please do. I am so open to it. Yeah.
I love how you've positioned that in the giving back to the city that
Mm,
helped you. I think that's beautiful. And I will also caveat that with, and if you are outside of that area, still
mm.
please reach out to Marisol because you know
Zoom exists.
yeah, right. And also it's too important to ignore it. And just again, I know we kind of we circled this at the start, but I do just want to kind of underline it as we come back around as well, which is we have spoken specifically about high achieving women in leadership positions because obviously that is your unique frame of zone of genius that you are focusing on. However, we also know that there will be vulnerable women who will be targeted by different people for different reasons. So, the same patterns will exist. There will still be these micro patterns that Marisol is talking about. So still pay attention. There will be men who will be being abused by women. Like there will be patterns that will exist. So I think just for clarity, we have spoken specifically about one group of people, and this is extrapolate it out. So when you're thinking about the stats that Marisol gave you there, like
Mm.
this is a huge, huge problem. So the quicker you start addressing at least part of this problem, the quicker you'll get to grips with how you can handle it and how you can help it. And then the
I
quicker
mean,
that impacts your business.
apparently 1.4 million women a year are victimized by coercive control. Now, that is not exclusive to high achieving women. That is women. And I don't know what percentage of those are high achieving women. I do know that when high achieving women report abuse, coercive control is the most common form of abuse that they report. So it disproportionately affects high-performing women. It's not exclusive to them. And like I said, 1 in 2 women in their lifetime will experience domestic abuse. And that's all women. That's me, that's you.
Yeah.
That's all of us.
I
I
mean,
think
I'm in, so yeah.
there are 2 of us in this room, and I
Yep.
can say that for sure 50% have been abused.
100%.
100% in this room have been abused. Now, zoom out, you know what I mean? Zoom out and look at that. And um, it just it crosses economic, you know, groups, it crosses language barriers, it crosses boundaries. I just talk about the UK because this is where I am, and I am going to London to do some talk. I'm going up to Scotland next month. I mean, I don't stay in Nottingham, but yeah, I mean, I'm from Canada. I know it's not like Canada doesn't have this problem. We
Yeah.
do.
Oh,
So it's
yeah,
massive.
it's a human problem, right?
Yeah,
This is
it's
this is
global.
the thing. Yeah,
It's
it's
global.
yeah.
So I can only talk about what I can talk about and do what I can. And yeah, but it's shockingly huge problem. There is no way to ever talk about it enough, ever.
Yeah. And I caveat that, not caveat, I build on that as well with, if you're concerned or scared or worried about how to start that conversation again, talk to Marisol, because
Mm,
sometimes it can be the unknown, the how do, okay, we're on board, we want to start this conversation. How on earth do we do this? Marisol's just told you she does talks, she can help you. Like,
yeah.
just start. Doesn't matter how, just start.
I mean, go to my website, contact me through there. We can book a call. We can get on my calendar. You can, if you're in Nottingham, I can come to your company. Like if you're in London next month, you can see me speak at the National Women's Leadership Conference. It's not, I mean, the one great thing we can say about, the 2025 is we have got all this amazing technology that connects us. Like I said, I've got a client in the United States who we started working together on Monday, and I was the first person in her entire world who made her think she wasn't crazy. And we're like 7 hours apart. So nothing is an obstacle
Yeah.
to getting help. At least if you want to reach me, there is
Yeah.
no obstacle.
And your website address is marisoljamescoaching.com.
That's it. That's the best place to find me.
And the details for that will be in the show notes, so there is no excuse for not having the contact information. Is there any other ways in which people can get in touch with you or connect with you or get more information about what you do?
Always LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram. And yeah, no, I think probably directly through my website or through LinkedIn or Instagram. Although I basically use Instagram for as just I don't post on there very much. I need to get better, but I'm on LinkedIn every day quite a bit.
Excellent. So people can find your content there, and I do know as well, Marisol does list the places that she's speaking and events that she's going to on her website as well. So if you want to go along and support and have a listen, you can absolutely go and do that.
Great, yeah.
Marisol James, is there anything else you would like to say?
Thank you for giving me the platform and the time. And I just, again, I mean, I know I said it already, and I'm just going to say it one last time. If you feel crazy in your relationship or you find yourself questioning who you are and even sort of what happened yesterday, you are not in a healthy, good place. You really need to reach out for help. And if you want to reach out to me, I open arms, no judgment, no nothing, no commitment, no nothing. But if you do have someone you can go to, or you have, if you've got a church or you've got something, um, reach out, just ask, like, am I crazy? Because you're going to find out, chances are you're not.
Marisol James, thank you so much for joining us on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast.
Thank you, Katie. We barely got into the whole sabotage thing. Like we
Mm.
touched on it a bit about how it's part of their control to make you look so bad at work. So, I mean, my ex loved sleep deprivation. That was his big thing. You know, he loved sleep deprivation. And he would just kill my sleep. And one of the hardest things that I had to learn how to do again was to relax enough to go to sleep
Mm.
because I was so used to starting to drop off. And then he would start a fight. The light would flick on. He would slam a door. He would, toss and turn or cough in my face, like just something, anything to keep me up. And you don't realize how much that impacts your health, like it's just astonishing.
To be fair, I mean, it's the kind of tactics they use in psychological warfare, isn't it? I mean, literally, they are. It's screwing with your brains.
Torture. It's
Yeah,
torture.
yeah,
And then we expect women to get up and handle the kids and get to work the next day and run a sales meeting and
yeah.
remember all the numbers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that women can go through what I did and show up and do what they do is such a testament to how strong they actually are. The irony is they think that they are so weak. They
Mm.
think they are so, so pathetic and, and it's exactly the opposite, but you can't see it when you're in it. You have no sense of
As
reality.
with everything, right, though, and this is why we need people like you, and we need people who have the distance, so that when you spill what you think is all of your crazy out,
Mm,
someone kind of rummages around in it with you and goes, "No, but do you see now?"
mm. I mean, I remember one of his favorite things to do was I just said it's one of these things that sounds so stupid. Like it was one of these things if I said to someone, he makes fun of me in front of the Sainsbury's checkout woman. And they'd be like, what's your problem? And I would say, if I said to somebody who was like, if somebody said to me, whenever we go out in public, he embarrasses me in front of total strangers, I would be like, oh shit, because I remember he would do that. And I remember they always looked uncomfortable. Like they didn't quite know what to do with it, right? Meanwhile, I'm packing the groceries, trying to get the hell out of there. But this one woman I remember actually just looked right at me and she said, are you okay? And I was so taken aback, you know? And I was like, she said, are you okay? Like, are you okay? And oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm great. Covering
Hmm.
up, right? And oh my, but then he shut up and I knew that I was in terrible trouble because she asked me if I was okay. But she saw something in the behavior or my behavior. She saw and she knew, like she
Well,
absolutely
yeah, she
knew.
saw you, right?
Yeah, she knew. But I didn't know at the time. That's called dog whistling, which is very common in abuse, where he's behaving a certain way and saying certain things, and you know what it means. Like you hear the subtext, right? You know what's going on. Like I knew when he started saying the sort of stuff he did at the Sainsbury's that I was in for a 3-hour fight at home. I knew it. Like I
Mm.
knew it was coming, so I was
You
getting
knew the
tense.
playbook, yeah.
And I would snap and I would look like a lunatic in public because I mean, what am I reacting to, right? Well, I know what I'm reacting to. It just
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet. So, but if somebody says to me, he makes fun of me in the Sainsbury's and he embarrasses me in front of strangers, and he always, whenever he's angry at me, he says these things, but then he'll say those same things in a joking way in front of strangers. Am I crazy? It's like, no, it's called dog whistling. You're being put on notice. And he's doing it in public where you can't react. Or if you do react, you look like there's something wrong with you. I mean, it's such a classic power play. And if you had never been in that kind of situation, you don't know how abusive it is. I mean, it's intimidation, it's mind games, it's gaslighting, it's fucking with your head big time,
Yeah.
And
On purpose as well. It's not
yeah,
accidental.
knowing
That's the thing,
exactly
right?
what they're doing. Yeah. So it's one of these things where there's so many, like like when I talk about the micro patterns, this is what I'm talking about. The micro patterns and micro behaviors are so much louder and bigger to me than the big red flags. Like she's showing up hungover again, or okay, well, yeah, I see that. But I look at the small stuff like, is she afraid to go shopping with him because every time she goes shopping, he embarrasses her? or picks a fight. You know what I mean? Like, or is she canceling important work commitments last minute? Well, is it because he's hidden her passport again? Or has he sabotaged her in some way so she physically cannot get there? I mean, these are things that HR would just chalk it up to, she's slipping. We can't keep her. She's not doing the job. But high
Yeah.
achieving women.
Or those things are let slide and slide and slide because it's unusual to start with, right? It's really unusual that they wouldn't do that. And then there is the pattern, and then it gets talked about but
Mhm.
not addressed
Well, and it's
for
on
too long.
performance reviews where it's like, well, we've noticed. And one of the worst things, oh my God, I was talking to one woman and I almost jumped through the laptop at her, but she was being abused at home and it had shown up at work and they had noticed and they decided that she was burned out. So when they approached her in that way, they said, well, we think you're burned out. And she didn't want to say yes, but also, you know. So she said, okay, I guess I'm burned out. And they said, you can work at home 2 days a week. And she was like, and she refused. She said, no, I don't, I'm fine. I can do better. I'll work harder. I'll improve. Please don't do that. And she said to me, she's like, being at home 2 days a week,
Yeah.
it's like I'm right.
It's the
I mean,
opposite of what would
it's
be
the opposite
useful,
of
right?
what I need.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to get to the office. It's not great, but at least I'm away from him. Although sometimes he would show up at the office like surprise visits and he would stalk her like cyber stuff and texts and stuff, but at least she was physically away. And they were sending her into the lion's den an extra 2 days a week. And she panicked and didn't want that. She said to me, how do I refuse it? I said, well, I said, can you tell them what's really going on? Can you explain? And she said, I can try. There's one woman in HR. I said, well, approach her, see how supportive she can be. And I have no idea what happened because I haven't heard from her again. Fingers crossed she was supported. But my big fear is like women sort of say, okay, I guess I'm burned out. Oh, you want to send me home 2 days a week? That's what I have to do to keep my job. Okay. And it's the
Yeah,
worst
it
possible
gets worse.
solution, you know?
Mm. I'm just conscious. I didn't stop recording, and everything you've just said is really fucking important. Can I keep that in too?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Just what you were saying about dog whistling and then some extra signs. I was like, do you know what? That's
keep
really
it. No,
useful.
keep it in.
Yeah.
Keep this whole
Thank
thing
you. Yeah.
in.
Thanks.